I'm going to adjust some of your cameras or your microphones here, please. Just move them to the side. Good afternoon to all the media in the room, and good afternoon to the Omaha community. The purpose of this press conference is to give a detailed accounting of the officer-involved shooting that took place on August 28th. Before I start, I want to publicly state my condolences to the family of Cameron Ford. I privately gave my condolences to the family before this press conference where I met with the family. I appreciate them, and they are hurting. Anytime the branch of government in place to protect society is responsible for the death of a citizen, a full accounting must take place. The Omaha Police Department takes great concern and diligence in the aftermath of every officer-involved shooting. Part of the delay in responding today is Omaha Police Department doing their due diligence. Douglas County Sheriff's Office and the Nebraska State Patrol assisted in this investigation. The order of my press conference will be as followed. We will do a video presentation, followed by a statement by myself, a statement by the mayor. We will do question and answer, and then I will do a closing statement. So at this point in time, I'm going to give you a few moments to affix your cameras on the television to my left, where we will play the presentation.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Neil Bonacci with the Omaha Police Department Public Information Office. The information you are about to receive is intended to provide details, as we currently understand them, of an officer-involved shooting that occurred on Wednesday, August 28th, 2024 at 6423 North 78th Avenue. This presentation may contain graphic images which could be disturbing to some people. Viewer discretion is advised. On Wednesday, August 28th, 2024, at approximately 7 a.m., the Omaha Police Department SWAT team assisted the Omaha Police Department Gang Investigations Unit in serving a court-authorized search warrant at 6423 North 78th Avenue in Omaha, Nebraska. Search warrants are granted by completing an affidavit of probable cause, listing the specific location and people to be searched, specific items of property to be searched for, and details to establish probable cause for the search warrant. The warrant for 6423 North 78th Avenue listed items to be searched for as fentanyl, weapons including firearms, and venue items identifying the occupants of the residence. In addition, officers may request the ability to serve the search warrant without notifying any potential occupants of the structure, commonly referred to as a no-knock search warrant. This request is based on several factors, including possible threats to officer safety, the criminal history of individuals involved in the investigation, and the potential that evidence will be destroyed. The affidavit for probable cause is then reviewed and scrutinized by a judge, at which time the judge may approve or deny the search warrant. Furthermore, in the aftermath of the tragic death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky on March 13th, 2020, Omaha Police Chief Todd Schmatter mandated additional measures by which Omaha Police Department no-knock search warrants are evaluated and approved. On December 22nd, 2020, at the directive of Chief Schmatter, the Omaha Police Department Policies and Procedures Manual was modified, stating that no-knock search warrants must have the approval of an OPD captain or deputy chief prior to service. These changes were implemented in an effort to prevent the loss of innocent lives while increasing safety for all involved. The search warrant at 6423 North 78th Avenue was pursuant to an illegal narcotics distribution investigation and was signed by a Douglas County judge on August 23, 2024. The target of the investigation was listed on the search warrant as Cameron Ford, black male, 37 years old. The search warrant included a request for a no-knock warrant. Factors listed in the request included information that Mr. Ford was a documented hardcore gang member and was likely in possession of a firearm. Mr. Ford had a violent criminal history to include charges for robbery, use of a weapon to commit a felony, carrying a concealed firearm, cocaine possession, possession of a stolen firearm, possession of crack cocaine with intent to deliver, possession of a controlled substance, flight to avoid arrest, possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, domestic violence assault, failure to appear, and resisting arrest. Prior to the service of the search warrant and per OPD policy, a threat assessment was completed, which included information on both the residents and Mr. Ford. The threat assessment includes factors such as the severity of the crime, a suspect's criminal history, including firearms offenses and other indicators of a propensity for violence and gang affiliation. Structural safety considerations are also evaluated to include fortification, surveillance systems and lookouts, aggressive pets, and armed parties associated with residents. OPD policy states that threat assessments with a score of 25 or above must be served by the OPD SWAT team. The threat assessment score for 6423 North 78th Avenue was an 80. In addition, officers were provided information from 2 independent sources, one of whom was a federal agent, that Mr. Ford was in possession of a firearm. Prior to the service of the search warrant, the OPD SWAT team was given a case briefing by the host unit case investigator, indicating the high potential for the presence of firearms and powder fentanyl inside the residence owned by Mr. Ford, as well as Mr. Ford's criminal background. All SWAT officers were provided with a case outline, potential threats, and layout of the residence. A tactical briefing was conducted by the SWAT team leader for the operation, again outlining known and potential threats and a deadly force policy review. On Wednesday, August 28, 2024, the Omaha Police Department SWAT team, in conjunction with several supporting units, served the search warrant at 6423 North 78th Avenue at 7 a.m. During the service of the search warrant, Officer Adam Vale was the first SWAT team member into the residence. He proceeded up the stairs and turned left down the hallway. Officer Vale then encountered the suspect, Cameron Ford, who exited from the master bedroom and fired one round which struck Mr. Ford in the chest. 9 seconds later, Officer Vale and an additional SWAT officer requested medical attention for Mr. Ford. Officer Vale and the other SWAT team members then immediately began life-saving measures. Omaha Fire Department medics were on standby per standard procedure and took over medical care, eventually taking Mr. Ford to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, where he later died. The investigation showed that Mr. Ford was not armed at the time he was shot. Officer Vale was equipped with a body-worn camera. However, the view was obscured by the ballistic shield used by Vale during the operation. What you were about to hear is the audio from Officer Vale's body-worn camera, along with still photographs from the incident.
Shots fired!
The Omaha Police Department officer-involved investigations team interviewed Officer Vale regarding his actions during this incident. Officer Vale provided a voluntary statement to investigators during which he outlined the numerous potential risks to officer safety given during the briefing and what he encountered during the service of the warrant, which included the following. Mr. Ford was a documented hardcore gang member and had a violent criminal history including multiple firearm charges. The high potential of the presence of powder, fentanyl, and a firearm. During the service of the warrant, there was no response from Mr. Ford despite repeated loud verbal commands from the SWAT team members outside and inside the residence, to include 6 from Officer Vale once inside the residence. Mr. Ford charged out of the room. Officer Vale was unable to see Mr. Ford's hands. Officer Vale feared that he and his fellow officers were in a life-threatening situation. given the rapid movements of Mr. Ford and the totality of the circumstances. Pursuant to the warrant, a search of the residence was conducted. The following items were located and seized as evidence: a black Delton Inc. semi-automatic AR-15 style pistol loaded with 31 rounds of live ammunition, approximately 46 grams of suspected fentanyl powder, 816 blue M30 fentanyl pills, 27 unidentified light pills requiring laboratory testing, 292.5 grams of marijuana, 4 ounces of codeine syrup, more than 2,200 in U.S. currency, narcotic sales equipment, and exterior surveillance cameras. Officer Adam Vale is a 17-year law enforcement veteran, spending the last 6.5 years with the Omaha Police Department. Officer Vale is assigned to the OPD Gang Suppression Unit, as well as the OPD SWAT team. During his tenure with the OPD SWAT team, Officer Vale has served 122 high-risk search warrants and responded to 41 additional SWAT callouts, including 23 enhanced security operations. A review of Officer Vale's disciplinary history showed no violations of the Omaha Police Department's use of force policies, nor was he on the Omaha Police Department's early warning tracking system for infractions. This incident is the subject of a criminal investigation to be reviewed by the Douglas County Attorney's Office and is also the subject of an administrative investigation. Per Nebraska state statute, 2 outside agencies assisted with the investigation, consisting of investigators from the Nebraska State Patrol and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Conclusions about whether the actions of the officer are consistent with department policy and the law will not be made until all facts are known and the investigation is complete. Per Nebraska state statute, a grand jury will be convened to review this incident. This video is intended to inform and educate the public about a critical incident in our community. The Omaha Police Department, in partnership with our community, provides impartial, ethical, and professional law enforcement services and protection. We strive to maintain the trust and confidence of our citizens while working to improve the quality of life.
Okay, I'm going to give you the opportunity to reorientate your cameras back to the table, please. I want to add some more details to the video. Viewer discretion is still advised. Mr. Ford was shot in the chest through the left side, so right about here, from an estimated 5 feet away. I asked how the body came to rest in the hallway right outside of the bedroom, if he was charging, because it's not like in the movies. A person's body can still move forward before they die, and oftentimes do. The autopsy showed a severed spinal cord that would have most likely rendered him paralyzed, stopping the inertia. When we met with the family earlier today, the family mentioned there may be hidden cameras in the house. Detectives are drawing up a search warrant right now to go and check for those cameras. We did confiscate cameras in plain sight previously. Douglas County Attorney Don Klein is in the process of evaluating the incident and will make the final determination on any charges or not prior to a grand jury. I must determine the work status of Officer Vale pending any potential charges and the grand jury. When evaluating the use of force, consideration must be given to the totality of circumstances, as well as whether or not the officer was faced with a split-second decision. Historically, I've taken a hard line against deliberate or derelict actions of Omaha police officers. On Officer Vale's decision to shoot and a split-second response, I have determined that his duty status will be in a desk assignment away from the public until such time as the grand jury process can evaluate all the evidence and make a determination. In addition, Officer Vale will go through a rigorous internal affairs investigation. Moving forward, I am in the process of reevaluating a second time the no-knock search warrant policy for the Omaha Police Department. Although I will say, generally the concern with no-knock warrants is the people inside don't know if it is the police entering their home, which can understandably cause a confrontation. On this no-knock, There were 23 total verbal commands and 5 by Officer Vale himself, and 11 seconds elapsed before the shooting. On the other hand, it was 7 a.m. in the morning. Perhaps Ford was awakened. There was no spoken word from Ford. We could hear on the video, and Officer Vale said there was no spoken words. On one hand, Ford did not say, "I am in here to the police, I surrender." On the other hand, Ford had a gun by his bed and did not grab to use it. I will add there is no way the gun could have fallen out of Mr. Ford's hand and landed where it did by his bed in the bedroom. That wouldn't have been possible. So he was unarmed. There is a huge gray area of unknown there, compounded by the blocked body-worn camera from the shield. Future consideration that I am strongly considering is affixing the camera to the helmet for future SWAT service. On a side note, though, the body-worn camera at least gave us the audio and video, the pre- and post actions of the officers. There was nothing of concern that we could see in the pre- and post actions on the body-worn cameras. The officers were very professional in their life-saving measures. During my meeting with the family, I did show them the body-worn camera footage. I wanted them to see that it did not capture the shooting and that the shield had blocked it. The prescribed manner to release body-worn camera footage is through the grand jury process at its conclusion. I'm going to turn this over to have a statement by the mayor, then we will return and I will take your questions. Mayor Stother.
Thank you. Do I need that? I probably don't need that microphone. Thanks, Chief. I do want to send my condolences to the Ford family. Loss of life is never the desired outcome when we issue a search warrant. I do have the utmost confidence, however, in the investigative process. Chief Schmatter, we all know, has established a record of thoroughness and accuracy and accountability, and this investigation will be no different. And so I want to thank the investigative team. I want to thank the team for collecting and documenting the video evidence that we just showed you in a clear and transparent manner. And so the investigation will just continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to turn to the question and answer segment. Some ground rules, please. You need to state your name and your immediate organization that you are with. A microphone will be walked over to you. Sometimes I hear feedback that the audience at home has a hard time hearing the questions. That's why I want the microphone to be used. And then also, I'm going to start with Kevin Cole, veteran reporter with the Omaha World Herald, with the first question.
Chief, we could hear on that video someone say, "Oh shit." I assume that was Officer Vale.
Yes, that was Officer Vale.
Were those the only words uttered?
Those were the only, well, there was Officer Vale delivered 5 verbal commands, and then the only other word uttered prior to the shooting was, or right after the shooting, was the "oh shit" statement.
Do you take anything from that statement because it's typically one of "I committed an error"?
It could either, look, there's a gray area here. It could either be taken that way, or it could be taken he was startled upon a charge. It's very hard to say on that, Kevin. It's very hard to say.
Chief Alex McClune,
Hi, Alex.
how do you approach that in the investigation, asking Vale about his statement?
The way we conducted this investigation is I wanted Vale to talk, tell us what happened from his perception, all the stimulus that he perceived from start to finish. Once we received that rendition, then we went in and probed for extra details and then challenged as much as we could the statement versus what we do have for evidence at hand. And as you can see, it would have been much easier had the body-worn camera not been blocked. But that's the approach that we took with this interview. He was represented by counsel, and he interviewed with us Friday at 5 o'clock.
Chief Aaron Haggerty with Channel 7. To be clear, was the full video shared with the family?
There was 2 officers in the hallway, and then a 3rd officer that went upstairs. We showed them the video from when they entered into the house to the shooting so that they could see that the one officer that went to the kitchen, the 3rd officer, just wasn't in position to see it. You could see his body camera showing the kitchen area. The Officer Vale, just like the still photo showed, if we can go to that still photo, please, and lock it on the screenshot of what you see, that's what you see. You see just the shield. Then the 2nd officer, right behind Officer Vale, and the reason they were stacked, this hallway was less than 3 feet. They couldn't get side by side. So they did have to alter their tactics to some degree, and that officer's vision, body-worn camera is obstructed as well. It doesn't show anything. So we showed all 3 of those, and all the body-worn camera from the minute they arrived to the minute they left will be subject to the grand jury. I've had my detectives look at each and every stitch of that.
And why only screenshots in this presentation?
Well, for one, Aaron, we mentioned earlier, okay, there's 2 mentions earlier, but I'll remind you. The body-worn camera blocks it, okay? And then 2, the prescribed manner is the only thing written in law as it relates to evidence and body-worn camera footage is in the grand jury process. And it states that it should be released at the end of the grand jury. So we're attempting to conform to that, but give as much transparency as we possibly can. Let's move the microphone down here so we can get some questions from this side of the room.
Hi, Johan from Channel 6. I
Joe.
just have a question. You mentioned that Ford was unarmed. Does that have anything to do with the investigation as you follow?
Yeah, the fact that Mr. Ford is unarmed is completely germane to the situation. As I said earlier, Mr. Ford didn't say anything about surrendering, but he also had a very high-capacity gun by his bed. He did not grab that gun and enter the hallway either, so we don't know what his intentions were. Obviously, if he had a gun in his hands, it might up his intention level. So it is germane to this investigation, and at this point, we're reliant upon the evidence that we have at hand and the officer's statements.
Hi, Chief Jill Lankins with Channel 3. So I know you mentioned considering fixing the helmet cameras. Can you kind of explain currently what the limitations are now and what you hope those fixtures would do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a little background on body-worn cameras and how they evolved into the Omaha Police Department. We were one of the first agencies to go to full body-worn camera deployment. And they are for the officers that are answering calls in the field. There was a complaint several years back that went to Internal Affairs, and the complaint had to do with a SWAT team search warrant. And at the conclusion of that complaint, the citizen filed their right with the Citizen Complaint Review Board. And the review board came back with a recommendation for me, let's affix the SWAT team with body-worn cameras. Thought that was a tremendous fix. So we did that. We implemented that many, many years ago. Lots of times we are still able to capture what took place. Body-worn camera is going to sit about right here. That's where all our cameras sit. We've always been able to see what goes on inside of the search warrants, but this narrow hallway altered the terrain completely because it was less than 3 feet. And so that shield took up a greater amount, and then we didn't have a stack of officers with him as well. Just 2 because that hallway was so tight. And so we didn't get any of the peripheral officers' body-worn camera, which we normally would have. So to try to shore this up in the future, I'll look at doing it on their helmets. But even then, it's a dynamic environment with a shield, round and corners. It may or may not capture everything, but we want to give it the best chance we can. And that's the progression I'm looking at there. Thank you for that question.
You mentioned the change in policy after Breonna Taylor. Has there been any change in the number of no-knock warrants issued since then, since that policy change?
Yeah, I'll have to go back and take a look at the raw data, but really there was 2 changes made by the Omaha Police Department in the aftermath of Breonna Taylor. Anytime that we see something occur across the country that we can learn from and make adaptations for so that it doesn't happen here, we have historically done that. When my command staff and I evaluated the Louisville, Kentucky Breonna Taylor death, we thought to ourselves, look, no-knock warrants need to be done in most egregious situations. I am a firm believer that I cannot restrict my officers' ability to protect themselves, but we should also try to control the environment as much as possible to minimize the number of officer-involved shootings we've had in our city. That approach, by the way, has worked incredibly well in the sense that our officer-involved shootings have dropped sequentially lower over the course of 10 years. The 2 changes that were made. 1, I wanted a captain or a deputy chief to make that final decision. If it was going to be for the destruction of evidence only, a deputy chief, somebody right next to me, was going to make that decision for this 900-member agency. If it was for officer safety reasons, I delegated it to a captain. Before, it could be made from a lower level supervisor. That's change number 1. Change number 2 came in the way of tactics and training. The typical no-knock where you breach the door and go rushing right in, that's changed. Most of the time, we do something called a breach and hold. And that is, we'll breach the door, doing the no-knock, give our loud verbal commands, and just remain there. On this particular occasion, we did what we call limited penetration, and that was because of the threat level associated with this venue, and Mr. Ford did strike an 80 on our threshold, and 25 mandates the no-knock and the warrant itself. So that is the changes, that's the progression that got us here today. I will look at it further to see if we can do anything else to try to prevent this from happening again. I will say this, at some point in time, Omaha Police was going to have to go in and make an arrest. Thank you for that question.
Thanks for your time, Chief. I have 2 questions. Did you say you know the number of no-knocks for warrants since that department policy change?
Yeah, we have the data. It's I think we have the data going back to 2021. So let me get my staff working on that, and we can see what we can do to get you a packet on that.
Thank you. And then my second question is the gray area you mentioned that prompts the second look at the department policy. Can you explain your thinking? Is it the fact that someone lost their life, or is it public perception of policing? What's your thinking?
Look, we do have a loss of life in our community, and it is at the hands of the government in place to protect society. So I put the utmost premium on that. Our job is to investigate and make an arrest. We do have the legal authority to utilize deadly force. I take that responsibility. I consider it awesome, and I consider it my job as chief to scrutinize it as much as possible. The gray area that I'm talking about here is, what was Mr. Ford's actions? What were his intentions? We can't get inside his mind. He didn't voice anything. He didn't surrender, yet he didn't pick up the gun to exit into the hallway. You see competing interest on this particular matter from both sides. And so when I talk about gray area, that's what I'm talking about. We are left with the evidence we have at hand, and we are left with what the officer's statements are. We're also left with the officer's good work history that he's had within the Omaha Police Department, and he is somebody that served a lot of search warrants. He's very proficient in the SWAT team realm. Kevin?
Chief, how many people were in the home at the time?
The only person in the home was Mr. Ford himself.
He was the only one in the home.
Yes.
Did they make that no-knock because they knew he would be alone, or was that just circumstance?
So when they will do a high-risk no-knock, they're going to try to give themselves the greatest advantage possible for their safety and for the safety of any occupants inside. I'm sure that there was surveillance of the place before, study as to what was inside. And remember, Kevin, it was done at 7 in the morning, and that's designed to try to give the best element of surprise. So those factors are taken into consideration. Obviously, if there's intel that suggests there's a lot of people in the house, perhaps it's best to wait till a different time to serve that warrant. But he was the only one in the residence.
I have a couple of questions following what he asked.
Just state your name again, please.
Joe on from 6 News.
Thanks, Joe.
So, since no one else was in the house, can you help us understand why not try to arrest him outside?
Well, there was the threat indicators that we had, and the determination from the SWAT team and the supervisor that approved it was, look, he's dangerous, according to the threat assessment. If you take a look at the weapon that was at his disposal, it's a very impressive weapon. And so to give them the best advantage possible, and this was an advantage for safety of the officers and just really general safety, it was chosen to do this way. Obviously, my second slice at evaluating these no-knock search warrants will have to give some consideration to breach and hold on this particular situation, maybe see if we can call them out. There's just a lot of intangibles that go into this. And so that's part of my analysis moving forward. Your question drives at that analysis.
Okay. Another question I had was, so the threat assessment here was 80. It takes only 25 for no knock. Is that the highest you've seen for this?
That's very high. It's very high. It's possible it could be higher, but that was a very high threat assessment. And again, you know, the threat assessment is your preamble information for your pre-planning. You're going to want your police department, before they serve a warrant, to do copious amounts of investigation, have a threat assessment, have a detailed accounting, serve it at the right time, try to minimize the number of people inside. And you want that. But police work is a very, very dangerous profession. It's got a lot of variables and a lot of intangibles, and those played out on this occasion.
Okay. And my last question is, can you describe the meeting with the family more? Which family members were there? Did they have an attorney? And what did they tell them? And if they're overall cooperating?
Yeah, we had 8 members meet with myself and my command staff before. I invited them up at 11 o'clock today. 8 people showed up. There were 7 family members, and they were accompanied by Senator Terrell McKinney. You could tell that the family was hurting. They appreciated the opportunity to meet with me. They appreciated the fact that I showed them the video. You know, it's a tough meeting. They lost a loved one. And I'll never, ever minimize that on any level. And then also it's an opportunity for me to look them in the eyes, apologize to them, and pledge my transparency on this matter. We still continue to look into this. As I said earlier, we're out serving a search warrant right now at the house trying to find any potential hidden cameras, if there are any. Okay, so we're going to continue working on this particular matter because it's that important to me, it's that important to the family, it's that important to our community.
Alex McClure, KTV. You mentioned Mr. Ford was involved with a gang or gangs. Can you talk about that? And can you talk about officer safety moving forward when you have these interactions with gangs?
I can. As far as his involvement in the gang, I'm going to turn that over to a little bit more of a subject matter expert on that. Captain Christensen, can you get into that aspect just a little bit as to what you feel that you can share on that front?
Yes, Mr. Ford was a documented hardcore gang member. This time we're not going to release which particular gang which he was a member. But obviously anytime you have gang members who are in possession of firearms or potentially in possession of firearms, coupled with the fact with illicit narcotic sales, obviously that ups the threat level for any types of operations we conduct, be it search warrants or just routine traffic stops, things of that nature.
I do want to point out, look, just because somebody's a gang member, just because they've been involved in criminal activity, just because they have history of firearms. That is not a death sentence. Okay, that moment in time, that's just preparation work so the officers can prepare, try to control the environment to minimize any damage, anything that goes wrong as much as possible. But at the moment in time when an officer fires a weapon, the only thing that matters at that point in time was, what is the threat?
Hi, Chief Joe Lampkins, Channel 3. I wanted to ask you if you could explain, the role Officer Vale has. He's obviously the first one through the door, going through this no-knock search warrant. So tell me, in a situation where something might not have gone wrong, what does the role he has going in first mean?
Yeah, Officer Vale had the most dangerous role. He was the bunker officer. He was leading his contingents of officers, SWAT officers, into that building. So conceivably, he was going to be the first one to establish any threat. And indeed, he was the first one to put eyes on Mr. Ford. And Mr. Ford, presumably, saw him first. So that bunker officer, that entry-level role, Officer Vale carried the hardest responsibility, the most dangerous responsibility. The other officers peeled off downstairs to clear that area to render it safe, and then some went to the kitchen to render that area safe. But Officer Vale was the first one into the residence, which is historically the most dangerous role.
Has he been in that role before?
He has. He has. He served over 122 high-risk search warrants. He hasn't always been in that bunker role. Sometimes that gets rotated around, but he's been there numerous times.
And then last question for you, Chief. Is there anything unique about this situation as opposed to, just that high risk level that there was? If maybe there's anything Vale mentioned in his interview discussed with you guys earlier this week.
There really isn't. We're as comprehensive as we possibly can be here today. I'm not leaving out anything germane at all. This is one of these situations where I wish we had more information. We're coming at this from a gray area, so we have to give the totality of circumstances anyways anytime we have these events. This is a tough situation, and we laid it out as best we can because transparency is important to this community. And quite frankly, after meeting with that family, you're bet that I'm going to be transparent. Okay, I want to do a closing statement. First of all, I want to thank the media for coming in on Sunday. We had originally set this for Tuesday. I knew Tuesday was too long, but I didn't know when the officer would interview. He's represented by counsel. It is a criminal interview, okay? So I cannot force them to come in and talk to us on my time frame. Now I can on internal affairs. They'll have to work on my time frame there. But then the officer didn't interview till Friday at 5, and then we had some work to do yesterday, Saturday. So this was the earliest we could get out to the public, and this was the best that we could do. I am determined to ensure police community relations continues in a strong format in the city of Omaha. We have made tremendous strides on all our vital signs within the city: number of shootings, number of homicides, homicide clearance rates, number of complaints against Omaha Police Departments, and macro number of officer-involved shootings have gone down sequentially over the course of 12 years. We want to continue that stride because Omaha is a tremendous city. It's a great place, one of the safest cities in this country. And the reason it is because we have good police community relations. So it's my imperative that we're transparent and we continue to maintain strong police community relations. And you will see me out in the community in the aftermath of this to attempt to instill that even further. So I just want to end by thanking the family, thanking the community that's watching here today, and thanking the media for everybody that showed up. And your questions were very good. Thank you.